issues. Of course, joined by Gabby Giffords, the founder of Giffords, joined by United States Senate candidate Cal Cunningham, and by retired educator and a proud North Carolina gun owner, Johnny Shaw. Welcome, everybody, to the Road to Universal Background Check Tour. We have only just now broken 500,000 total views for this tour. It's a testament to the passion and enthusiasm that Americans have to come together around the issue of gun safety. How do we protect our kids, our communities? How do we stop the shootings? Welcome, everybody. Gabby, I'm going to start with you. You are zooming in today from Tucson, Arizona. How hot is it out there in the desert today?
109.
I wouldn't wish that on my on my worst enemy. But you're looking fresh and vibrant as ever. How are you occupying your time during quarantine, during this lockdown?
Oh, I'm so busy. A lot of Zoom calls. Work. Yoga twice a week. French horn, Spanish lesson, riding my bike, walking on my treadmill, Eat Groundhog Day.
Same thing over and over again. Gabby, it's always so inspiring to get to join you on these events. Cal, let me shift over to you. We were talking a little bit in the pre-room there about virtual is great. It keeps us home. It keeps us safe. But one of Gabby's and my favorite things to do is to sample some of the local cuisine. And I learned that not only are you a veteran, a gun owner, a candidate for the United States Senate, but one of the most knowledgeable people you'll find around the world about North Carolina barbecue. So can you just tell us what we're missing?
Peter, if you haven't been experiencing North Carolina barbecue, you might be missing about 25 pounds around your waist, because if you eat North Carolina barbecue, certainly like I love to, you can really pack it on. And we have a rivalry between our Eastern North Carolina barbecue and our Western North Carolina barbecue. I'm from right in the center of the state, Lexington, and we're very proud of our barbecue in Lexington.
Well, we at Giffords, we love people who love barbecue, who support universal background checks, and are right there in the center, bringing people together. Whether it's about protecting kids from gun violence or about important issues like barbecue. So, Mr. Johnny Shaw, let me bring you in. You're a retired educator, a gun owner. Can you just tell the people of North Carolina a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I grew up in a small town, North Carolina, Pittsburgh. I married my college sweetheart, and we have one son. He just recently got his PhD in media design, and he works for Mitsubishi Heavy Industry in Tokyo, Japan. So I had to give him a shout out. I worked 5 years in Chatham County schools and held various positions, teacher, coach, dropout prevention coordinator, and then administrator. And during when the Columbine shooting occurred, I was at that time I was vice principal. And with the Safe Schools initiative, several educators and myself attended a workshop on school, primarily dealing with how to procedures to deal with active shooters in school. And that workshop was presented by a first responder at Columbine. And his graphic details and just the horror of the event just really made me, it affected me in a way that made me wanted to work for universal background
Well, thank you
So
so
that's
much.
pretty much where I am on that one. Go ahead.
Well,
That's pretty much where I am on that. I got my first shotgun when I was 9 years old. I've been an avid hunter ever since. I shoot clay targets on a weekly basis, a member of 2 gun clubs, and pretty much that's pretty good summary of what I've been up to.
well, thank you so much.
I would like to just add, I also work with the Democratic Party, local Democratic Party. I'm on the executive committee, and I'm a vice chair of Oakland Precincts in Chatham County. Also on the board of directors of the Chatham County Council on Aging, and I serve as vice president.
That's great. You know, something I've really noticed about the gun violence prevention movement is how, at the end of the day, local it is. It's about leaders in folks' communities stepping up, bringing people together, talking about the issues, talking about the impact on kids, on parents, on communities from this gun violence epidemic that we face. Another really interesting element to the gun violence prevention movement is that it's also grounded by the experience of gun owners. So for those of, Gabby, Cal, Johnny, if you are a gun owner, can you raise your hand? That's right. We got 3 gun owners, Gabby, Cal, and Johnny. And I believe Cal and Johnny, you're both also veterans. Gabby, of course, was for a long time a proud Navy spouse. And it's just so exciting to see people, and I'm sorry, Cal, I know we get into the Army-Navy rivalry there, but I'm not a good arbiter of those disputes, so we can leave that for another day. But it just goes to show how broad-based a coalition of support that we have in North Carolina and in this country for the passage of common sense gun safety laws like universal background checks. And that is in the context politically of inaction in the face of tragedy. Just, last year you had a horrible situation at UNC Charlotte where a young man was killed in the process of trying to disarm an active shooter in his classroom. So we have a situation where we are literally asking our children to stand up to gunmen because politicians like incumbent Senator THOM TILLIS are unwilling to stand up to the gun lobby. And then you look at the fact that you've got gun owners who support universal background checks. You have, according to recent Giffords PAC polling, 80% of North Carolinians who support universal background checks. But you also dig a little deeper and you realize that THOM TILLIS is somebody who has benefited from $4.5 million in NRA gun lobby spending in order to win his first Senate race. And then voted against gun safety, voted to weaken our gun laws 9 times. So I just want to frame this conversation with the broad base of support for universal background checks and other gun safety issues, and the bottleneck that we face in Washington. That's not due to American people in general and North Carolina voters not supporting these policies because they do, but because of this toxic combination of money in politics and NRA support for these politicians. So with that, before we move on, I want to bring in a little video content that we and Gabby put together. So I'm going to ask that we bring that video up, and then we'll continue our conversation after that.
Courage shows truth to power and stands its ground. It's walking out. It's sitting down. It's marching towards something greater. Courage is telling your story even when it's hard to speak. Courage looks like this.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Congresswoman Gabby Giffords from Southern Arizona.
You can either complain about something or you can try to fix it.
I will always extend my hand across the aisle to do what's right for the American people, to build consensus, and to get the job done.
Earlier today, A number of people were shot in Tucson, Arizona.
Arizona Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, wounded in an assassination attempt just about 2 weeks ago, is about to take the next big step along what's expected to be a long road to recovery.
It takes courage to keep going, especially when it feels impossible.
To witness the return of our colleague, who is the personification of courage, Congresswoman Gabby Giffords.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
It's standing up and finding your voice again. Courage is speaking out. Courage is saying, we can do better. And knowing no problem is too big to fix.
It was so inspiring. Gabby, I'm always speechless after videos like this, but I know you've got such a powerful voice. Would you be willing to share some words with us?
I've known the darkest of days, days of pain and uncertain recovery. But confronted by despair, I've summoned hope. Confronted by paralysis and aphasia, I responded with grit and determination. I put one foot in front of the other. I found one word and then I found another. My recovery is a daily fight, but fighting makes me stronger. Words once came easily, today I struggle to speak, but I have not lost my voice. America needs all of us to speak out, even when you have to fight to find the words. I'm also in a second fight. The fight to stop gun violence is also a fight forged by tragedy and pain, a fight that can change lives. We are at a crossroads. We can let the shooting continue, or we can act. We can protect our families, our future. We can vote. We can be on the right side of history. Please join us in this fight. Vote, vote, vote. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Wow, Gabby, thank you so much. That was amazing. You always give me so much hope and remind me that even in some dark days for the country, when we face unprecedented challenges, that we have real opportunities to change things. And if you look at the North Carolina Senate race, if you look at Cal's race to beat incumbent THOM TILLIS, it just sort of raises the stakes, because if we do not win this race for North Carolina Senate, that means we won't be able to do things like pass universal background checks, which will help protect kids and communities from gun violence. Now, Cal, let's shift it over to you. You are a veteran of the United States Army. You volunteered to serve your country in the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks. You took an oath to protect and defend the Constitution, to protect this country against enemies, foreign and domestic. Can you tell us how your service frames your views on gun safety?
Well, Peter, it very much does. And just as we've been discussing, Representative Giffords, first of all, you really are an inspiration. Thank you for continuing to push the importance of making our families and our communities safe. And Peter, your leadership as well. I was trained on firearms in the military by the U.S. Army, but of course I had grown up in Lexington, that barbecue capital. And in Lexington, fathers, as mine did, taught sons and daughters safe and responsible use of firearms. And but frankly, notwithstanding my experience in the military on rifles and on pistols and carrying them in Iraq and Afghanistan, I feel like my chief qualification on this issue is that I'm a parent, and I'm the parent of 2 teenagers. And for years, I've done drop off at school, at middle school and high school. I now have a one who started college today full time, but I have another one in high school. And when I see them off, I expect them to come home safely. And Peter, you just described what happened at UNC Charlotte. It's a story that's known all too well to Americans now, and the risks have been building for years. Responsible gun owners, those of us trained on firearms, have a leading role to play in talking about how we keep firearms out of the wrong hands. And background checks, as we discussed them here in North Carolina, are very much about violent history checks. It's the simple proposition of, should we allow firearms in the hands of those with violent histories? And most North Carolinians, like most Americans, think that that's outrageous. And one way that we keep our communities safer, one of the ways that, Johnny, we keep our schools safer, is that we make sure that everyone who purchases a firearm goes through a background check. There shouldn't be loopholes. And frankly, Peter, I think this issue illustrates something that I'm talking about a lot in this campaign. That's a broken and corrupt politics that can't move forward in the midst of something that has broad, bipartisan public support, that's common sense, that's even supported by responsible gun owners, and that's background checks. I'm going to be a vote for it in Washington. This shouldn't be hard. Our politics make it too complicated. I think the North Carolina voters are going to register their votes at the voting booth this fall, and we're going to add another common sense solutions vote in the United States Senate.
Thank you. You know, I worked for Gabby when she got shot. A colleague of mine, Gabe Zimmerman, was murdered. Other colleagues were shot. 6 people died, 19 total shot. And, you know, I never thought that, you know, I'd ever sort of feel the threat of gun violence more personally and intimately than I did at that moment. And then I also became a parent. And when you think about, you know, as what we're doing as a society in our politics to, you know, leave kids unsafe, I think it is one of the most profound moral indictments against those in charge that we can possibly have as a country. And it's something that I feel very, very deeply, and it drives our work. And speaking of protecting our children, Johnny Shaw, as an educator for all those years, and also as a responsible gun owner yourself, what was it like knowing that you were vested with a responsibility to protect kids in your classrooms and in your schools from gun violence, but knowing that those in charge in Washington were oftentimes voting against the safety of those very kids?
Well, it was very discouraging. School safety shouldn't even be a issue. School safety should be the #1 priority. So it definitely was disheartening, and I'd like to see some changes made. I've been retired 17 years and nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. We were 20 years ago.
Yeah, but I think, you know, we got, you know, just under 100 days now until Election Day. And, you know, if we're able to, you know, flip the Senate seat in North Carolina, if we're able to elect Joe Biden, and these are going to be 2 close races in North Carolina. The race for North Carolina's electoral votes, and of course, getting Cal Cunningham elected to the U.S. Senate. And, you know, one thing I just want to sort of drop in here is you know, a call to action. When you have THOM TILLIS, who's protected by very powerful special interests. You know, I mentioned the $4.5 million in, you know, unregulated outside money that the gun lobby threw in to support him in his first race. Cal is going to need your, you know, your small dollars, your sweat equity. And, you know, go to, is it calcunningham.com?
CalForNC.com.
CalForNC.com. Go to CalForNC.com. Go to Cal's website. Sign up to volunteer. Donate immediately, and let's try to make some progress, even while we're on this Zoom right now. Gabby, go ahead, Cal. Sorry.
Can I just reinforce a point that you just made? Because, look, there's a lot of national commentary, and even a lot of North Carolinians think that change is just coming. But over the next 85 days, North Carolinians, we recognize that we don't do big decisive elections. We do this narrowest of squeaker elections. We elected our Democratic governor by a mere 10,000 votes out of 4.7 million cast in 2016. That's just 4 votes per precinct. And our election results in 2008, we were narrowly voted for Barack Obama, a mere 13,000 votes. And one of the predecessors in this very Senate seat, Kay Hagan, when she lost this race, you referenced all that outside unregulated spending in 2014. She lost by a mere just over 40,000 votes. Everything that North Carolinians do over the next 85 days can make the difference. And this issue is on the ballot. In my race, in the presidential race, and other races up and down the ballot, gun safety and keeping our communities and our families safe. And we may decide these races by the narrowest of margins. So we need those volunteers, and we need the hard work, and we need Representative Giffords and you, Peter, amplifying the importance of why we're doing what we're doing. So I'm glad that you gave voice to it, Peter.
4 votes per precinct. That is a powerful way to distill how close this election's likely to be, and how much we need, every North Carolina supporter of universal background checks and gun safety to do everything they can to get you, Cal, elected. Gabby, I want to pivot over to you. This month marks the anniversaries of multiple horrific shootings, including the one in El Paso, Texas, and I'm a native El Pasoan, so that hit me hard, Gabby. We've talked about that, but what have you learned from the mass shooting that hurt you and your community?
Be friends and family, and to live every day to the fullest.
Well, Gabby, I'm grateful for you each and every day. Now I want to sort of move forward in the program here. We've got a video that we made for this Road to Universal Background Checks tour. And we're going to play that in just a second. While we play that, I want to sort of talk to all y'all tuning in and encourage you to throw your comments and questions, whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter. Throw them in the comments, tweet at us, and we'll get to as many as we possibly can. But for now, please enjoy this video.
For the first time since the Clinton administration, the House of Representatives passes significant gun legislation.
This bill would basically require background checks for almost every gun sale or gun transfer in America.
Enough is enough. And our first order of business in the Senate should be to pass the House Background Checks Act.
As long as I'm the majority leader of the Senate, none of that stuff is going anywhere. I am indeed the Grim Reaper.
Over 90% of Americans support expanding background checks.
By closing these loopholes, we will make our communities safer.
We have a mission. We have an obligation. It is the right thing to do to save lives.
The Senate is a firewall for the NRA.
And change must come to Washington.
There are now more activists on the side of gun safety than on the side of the NRA.
Now is the time to come together. Be courageous. The nation's counting on you.
Wow, thank you very much for playing that. Cal, you saw John Lewis figured very prominently in that video, and his impact on history and everything that he's done for this country is manifest. Something that people don't know as much about is how integral he's been over the years to the fight for safer gun laws. He took to the House floor in 2016 and led the first ever sit-in on the floor of the House of Representatives, demanding action on safer gun laws. Gun violence is something that oftentimes impacts communities of color predominantly. So I was wondering, Cal, if you might share some thoughts with us on what John Lewis's leadership has meant to you, and how you, as a future United States Senator, might continue his fight for stronger gun laws.
Well, Peter, one of the loudest messages and voices that we hear from Representative Lewis is, of course, to seek change and to seek justice, and to do so nonviolently and peacefully, because that's how we bring people together for sustained and meaningful change. He's obviously looms large over the politics of North Carolina, the legacy that he leaves in civil rights and in voting rights, but also calling us together to deal with issues of community violence and violence in our neighborhoods that we here in North Carolina know all too well. It's, I think, an important legacy to draw from him, that we work to bring people together in much the way that Giffords and this Giffords effort has done. That is by engaging and listening, but always pushing and raising up the values that bring us together. Because I think ultimately there's so much more unites us than divides us. And on an issue like this, where there's such broad-based public support, if that voice is registered at the voting booth, if it's heard at the voting booth, if everyone who is eligible participates, and that voice is what's ringing loudest in the public debate, we're going to vote for reform. And part of what needs to happen on Capitol Hill is we're going to have to confront some of the corrupting, special and narrow moneyed interests that have used decisions like Citizens United to just pour unlimited resources into our politics, distorting not just who wins elections, but what happens when we vote on Capitol Hill. So I'm going to follow in the legacy of fighting for reform, fighting for voting rights, civil rights, and to make sure that every North Carolinian's voice is heard in debates just like the one we're having today.
Right. And Gabby certainly also, John Lewis is a big hero of hers. One of her last votes before being shot was actually a vote for John Lewis for Speaker, which is a little-known fact. So we have some questions coming in right now, and the first one is comes in from Marissa and goes to Johnny. The question is, Johnny, I'm from Durham, and I was grateful to see my congressman vote for background checks in the House last year. However, it feels hopeless to expect either of our senators to support it. What can we do about their inaction and the inaction of so many members of Congress who seem to offer only thoughts and prayers?
Marissa, the first thing you can do is vote for Cal Cunningham. We need to make change in Washington. Secondly, what I do, I get involved. I get involved with the Democratic Party. I get involved trying to let candidates that have the same ideological that I have. I just try to work hard. I try to be engaged in the community and that's what you need to do. You just don't sit around with the idea that it's hopeless. We can all make a difference if we look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think sometimes people, it's easy for them to feel cynical and hopeless, but this very Zoom right here is, to me, a source of great hope, because, like I said earlier, if we are able to win just a handful of elections of the thousands that are occurring 85 days from now, just a handful, that doesn't just put an end to the presidency of Donald Trump. It doesn't just fire Thom TILLIS from his lucrative job in the United States Senate. What it does is it puts Gabby Giffords into the Rose Garden of the White House, standing next to President Joe Biden and Senator Cal Cunningham, signing universal background checks into law. So thank you, Johnny, for describing for us what we need to do. This next question goes to you, Cal, from Carla, who says, I'm a parent like you, and I've been scared to send my teenage son to school. And as the parent of a black son, I still have fears about the waves of gun violence that plague our cities here in North Carolina. How can we ensure our kids will be safe when we drop them off at school and safe from community violence in our neighborhoods?
Well, first of all, Carla, let me tell you, I hear your voice. We experienced this in the Cunningham household as well. So I also recognize that, Carla, you may also have just a very unique and also special sense of the risk that your son experiences in whichever community you're calling in from. Let me tell you this. This is one of the things that gives me the greatest hope. When I was serving as vice chair of the Governor's Crime Commission, Governor Roy Cooper's vice chair, we held statewide hearings on how we keep our communities and our schools safe from the risk of gun violence. And we did them in several communities around the state on a school night. And there were hundreds of teachers, community leaders, even students, parents, law enforcement in those audiences. And the voices, the very, very narrow voices of opposition to progress were marginalized in those rooms. On school nights, we had standing room only, Carla, people just like in our family, just like in your family, concerned about this. It's why I know that if we do this right, if we campaign right and work hard over the next 85 days, we're going to elect common sense problem solvers to the United States Congress. And it's going to mean being able to pass background checks, just like we're discussing right here today. It will be an important step in the right direction.
And in that, in the polling we just released that showed 80% of North Carolinians supporting universal background checks, included in that statistic is that 62% of voters who supported Donald Trump in 2016 also support universal background checks. So, we get support from all corners. You don't get to 80% of anything without having widespread support across all cohorts and demographics. And Gabby, we were talking about recently, things that, what polls as high as universal background checks? What was it you were saying?
Ice cream.
Yeah, ice cream and free money.
Free money.
Yeah, it's two things that poll in the same at the same level of universal background checks. Yeah, these days it sort of seems like people think we've got free money, and we certainly have ice cream. So let's now go to Washington and check universal background checks off of the list. But Gabby, after the shooting, you turned around and founded Giffords. We've had a lot of success over the years. 350 pieces of legislation passed in 45 different states. We've changed the politics of this issue. We've taken the gun lobby on. We've gone toe to toe with them and won. Through all this journey, how do you maintain your positive outlook and your sense of optimism and hope for the future?
I want to make the world a better place.
That and at the end of the day, that's that's why people like you, Gabby, stepped up and ran for office back in the day. That's why you continue this fight. Cal, we've been talking about universal background checks and the fight for safer gun laws here. But in terms of making the world a better place, what else is part of your vision for North Carolina and for the country? What led you at the end of the day to do something courageous, right? It's hard running for office, to step up and say, I want to serve again.
Well, Peter, I don't think I couldn't not step up in this moment. As a parent, it starts, frankly, at home. and I mentioned my kids, Caroline and Will, earlier. They're part of the reason that I'm in this. After Parkland, my 2 kids went to school dressed in black, and they helped lead their classmates out of school in protest about the risk that what happened in Parkland might have happened at their high school. And I love them, and I'm listening to them. And to reference what Gabby just said, it is a calling. It is a moral imperative that we work to leave the world in a better place for the next generation, for those who come behind us. And I'm listening to my children, but I'll tell you as well, Peter, across North Carolina, and you mentioned folks who may vote for a different president and their support on this issue. There are a lot of voices that are feeling left behind and left out. And that's in part because of a very significant political and financial corruption that is dominating our politics in Washington. And it means that North Carolinians, whether they be Democrat, Independent, or Republican, your voices are being left out. So I'm running on reform. I'm taking on that corruption. Frankly, I think it's a linchpin issue that stands in the way of us expanding health care for Americans, North Carolinians, to have quality, affordable care. It stands in the way of us prioritizing investments in public education, raising wages. It stands in the way of us having bipartisan, very popularly held solutions on gun safety in our communities, fighting climate change. North Carolina just got hit by another hurricane, causing both property damage and loss of life here. We know that we need to be leaders on so many issues, and that reform gets us a pathway to make sure that the voices of North Carolinians are heard in those big debates and fights.
Thank you. Some of you said, that you listen to the kids. I think is of such great importance, but it's also, it sort of stands in stark contrast to the failures of people like Mitch McConnell and Thom Tillis, who, in so many ways, have left our kids to fend for themselves. Children should be benefiting from the leadership of adults. Adults should be endeavoring each and every day to pass along to their children and grandchildren a country in which they can live safely and prosper and be proud of. And in so many ways, whether it's the issue of gun safety or climate change or money in politics, we are failing that test. Johnny Shaw, we are getting to the end of our program today. You as a citizen, as an activist, as a gun owner and a veteran and a retired educator, in so many ways encapsulate everything that is part of this movement for safer gun laws, everything, frankly, that's good about this country. So I want to thank you for all of the ways that you have served your community, served your country, and provided a voice for regular, North Carolina voters who are sick and tired of status quo. They're sick and tired of the shootings. They want to be able to protect our kids and our communities. And I just wanted to turn it over to you for a few minutes. And one, after thanking you, and two, let you offer some concluding wisdom.
Well, I'd like to go back to Marcia for just a second. Marcia, not all gun laws are federal. We have state gun laws too. And you have two excellent representatives in the state legislature, and Senator Valerie Fashee and Representative Robert Reeves. And both of them are up for re-election, and it would pay to keep them because they're really good people. So back to your thoughts on comprehensive gun legislation, background checks. I mean, we can all make a difference. We can all make a difference if we want to stand by and let the same old happen. That's what's going to happen. But if we can all get together, work hard, work hard for candidates that feel in the same way that we do and have the same values, we will make a difference.
Great.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor for me to be on with such distinguished people. And
Johnny, the honor is ours. Thank you so much for your leadership and activism and your public service. Cal, Johnny is also a member of Sportsmen for Cal. Right, he's I don't know if you knew that, but he's a big supporter of yours, and so I wanted to sort of turn it over to you to sort of wrap up. But before I do, I want to sort of reiterate that call to action. The website is calfornc.com. Did I get it right that time? calfornc.com, and I want to call on, I think we're up over 100,000 people who have tuned in to this broadcast. The fact that you've taken the time out of your day to join this important conversation, shows how critically you view these issues of gun safety and others for, the 2020 election and for our futures. You, I think, are there. You're with us. You're on board with Gabby and me and the team at Giffords and our 2 million plus supporters across the country. You're on Team Cal. So please go to his website right now. 1, donate, give whatever you can because we've got this powerful special interest that we're up against. 2, volunteer to make phone calls. You can do this virtually from the safety of your own home. You don't need to venture out. And 3, make sure to vote. Create a plan to vote. Make sure everyone that's in your family and in your professional and social networks also does the same thing. We are responsible for everybody here. And if we sort of all put in an oar and do this together, I have a lot of confidence that Cal Cunningham is going to be elected to the United States Senate and be there with, Gabby Giffords and other survivors and advocates for gun safety signing universal background checks into law, because ultimately that is the number one thing we can do, supported by 80% of North Carolinians, to protect our kids and our communities from gun violence. So Cal, on behalf of me and Gabby, the millions of Gifford supporters, thank you for running for office. Thank you for being willing to put it all on the line and channeling the hopes and dreams of all of your supporters, and for being so committed to our safety. And we would just love it if you would share some concluding words for us.
Well, I want to thank you, Peter, and you, Representative Giffords, for helping show the way and helping bring people together around an issue that there's been historically a lot of paralysis. And that paralysis is frankly no better typified than the person that I'm going to replace in November with the support of North Carolinians, who has been a top beneficiary of special interest money on this issue and who can't get out of the shadow of Mitch McConnell and Mitch McConnell's very proud obstructionism. If we listen to the voices of North Carolinians, if we recognize what's happening in our communities, we see the risks facing our families, a way that we keep North Carolinians safe, a way that we make America a safer place and our communities safer, is we take common sense steps forward when we can. And what we have right in front of us, is typified by the polling that we see today, is broad-based, bipartisan, public support for a reasonable measure. And that is that before you buy a firearm, you ought to have to go through a violent history check. And if you have a violent history, you ought not be able to purchase it. It's frankly a very, very common sense step. And Johnny is a member of it. Peter, you mentioned it. We have a sportsman's group in support of this campaign. Responsible gun owners and those who pursue their sport recognize that we've got to take important, reasonable, bipartisan steps forward. That's the type of senator that I'll be for North Carolina. It's going to require a listening and engaging. But what you're doing, Peter and Representative Giffords, you're helping keep these issues elevated. And for that, I'm very grateful. Thank you for also, though, engaging North Carolinians today, giving us all an opportunity to see that there are, as today, tens of thousands of people engaged and prepared to vote on this issue. And that's where change will be brought. That's where change can be sustained.
Thank you so much, Cal. I'll wrap us up. And as I do, I just want to sort of frame the contrast, the choice for North Carolina one last time. Cal Cunningham, supported by growing numbers of North Carolinians in what's going to be a razor-thin, tight race up against incumbent Senator THOM TILLIS, who, despite the fact that these shootings continue, even in the midst of this global coronavirus pandemic, benefited from $4.5 million in outside unregulated gun lobby money when he first got elected. He's looking at benefiting from similar support this time, and I think that a lot of that explains why he's had such a bad voting record in the United States Senate, voting against our safety to weaken gun laws 9 times, and that's just in the United States Senate. His horrible voting record and leadership on this issue goes back even further if you look at his days in the North Carolina legislature. Everybody go to calfornc.com, donate, volunteer, vote on behalf of Gabby and me. Thank you for running, and thank you to the many thousands of people who have tuned in today. Cal, it's an honor to be with you, and we'll see you out there in the campaign trail.
Thank you, Peter. Representative Giffords, thank you. Johnny, thank you for being a part of what we're doing today as well. Everybody stay healthy and safe, please.